Nightingale was released in 2019 and takes place in 1825 Tasmania, where Clare, an Irish convict, goes on a quest for revenge when a British soldier commits atrocities against her and her family. Now, I had actually originally planned to review this movie when it came out in 2019, but it never got a wide enough release in the US to the area that I live in, so I never was able to see it in theaters, so it's just kind of been on my watch list since then. And the main reason I was interested in watching it was because of director Jennifer Kent. She also did The Babadook, and The Babadook is probably still my favorite horror movie from the 2010s. I thought it was fantastic, so basically anything that Jennifer Kent was going to do next, I was sold on without even knowing what it was about. And I went into this not really knowing anything about it either. I knew that it was apparently a violent movie, and that was really it. And on that note, to put it simply, The Nightingale is not an easy movie to watch. It's a movie about violence and the consequences of violence. It was actually originally going to be set in a modern era with its story, but Jennifer Kent decided to set it 200 years ago to kind of help remove people from the thought of it being current with its subject matter. But the movie tackles several hard subject matters, such as violence against women and people of color, treatment of the poor, racism and colonialism, specifically the annihilation of the Aboriginal people of Tasmania. So like I said, it's not an easy movie to watch. Usually in revenge movies like this, the violence goes for more of a grindhouse, gritty approach to it, but this opts for a more realistic one to make the violence feel really authentic. And this works incredibly well in favor for the movie, because the point of revenge movies is usually to get you on the same side as the protagonist who wants revenge on somebody. And in the first 15 to 20 minutes, it probably sets you so far on the side of the protagonist that you want just awful things to happen to the villains of this movie. Like, you completely understand the motivations of the protagonist wanting revenge. One of Kent's strongest assets as a director is her ability to establish atmosphere. The movie immediately feels uncomfortable and dangerous. The way the movie is shot contributes to the atmosphere too. The aspect ratio is tighter than normal, making the image feel somewhat claustrophobic. The cinematography itself is great, especially the framing of the characters and the editing for a lot of the shots. The acting is also phenomenal, especially from Aisling Franciosi as the lead character Clare. She has to reach these very, very vulnerable depths of emotion throughout the movie, and she does a great job at making it feel raw and incredibly believable for what this character has to experience. When Claire starts her quest for revenge, she recruits the help of a local Aboriginal tracker to navigate the wilderness. The tracker, Billy, is played by Bailaki Ganambar, and he is also great in the movie. Specifically, his and Aisling's chemistry is incredibly believable as these two characters that are coming from somewhat similar backgrounds of oppression and kind of finding each other in that time. Sam Claflin also plays the British officer Hawkins, the villain of the movie, who is assigned ownership of Clare when she is sent to Tasmania, so he has full say over basically her life. And this is probably the best performance I've seen from Claflin. His character is so thoroughly evil and detached from the reality of his actions that you're almost automatically rooting for his death. Hawkins is not only a mentally, physically, and sexually abusive person, he is also pathetic. And this is a credit to Jennifer Kent's writing. No character feels abnormally cartoonish in their roles. She brings realistic personality traits to all of them. Claire is hard-headed but also incredibly caring and shows realistic signs of PTSD throughout the movie. Billy is understandably hesitant to help any white people after the way he's been treated by them, but forms a connection with Claire and believes in something better for himself. Hawkins is incredibly possessive of the power he has and clamors for more. When he thinks he loses power in one place, he enforces what he has to a different spot. He's a weak, pathetic man. He's pretty much just a bully, and somebody who is clamoring for their power in the way that he does makes them feel a lot more dangerous than a lot of movie villains can be. The movie in general is great. Kent's writing and directing, along with Aisling's acting specifically, is thoroughly entertaining. I would say the movie is a little bit longer than it might need to be. However, the movie is intentionally paced slower to help explore the characters. It's not by any means slow, but it's also not as fast as some other Western-esque revenge tales. I, myself, personally really like movies that focus on characters, especially in situations like this. I honestly think the characters in the character work is probably the most important part of a story, and Kent exceeds in the subject matter. Much like the themes of depression and grief in The Babadook, the themes of violence in The Nightingale transcends human experience to be relevant to really any time, especially now. While the movie mainly focuses on violence against women, a significant portion of time is also dedicated to addressing colonialism, with the character of Billy being Aboriginal. From what I've seen, there's been some backlash to this, and in my opinion, most of the time, when people do get angry that something like this is in a movie, it makes me worried, because it makes me think that people are saying that it's not good representation, as in a way to just not have it addressed at all. And I'm not by any means the person to say whether or not it's good representation, but it also brings up a subject matter that I did not know about, specifically in Tasmania, and I think was good to make people aware of, especially if you're setting it in that time and setting. And the general purpose of having it there is to address oppression over basically all time, oppression of people over time, especially Aboriginal people. Clare is Irish and speaks Gaelic at times throughout the movie, along with Billy speaking in his native language. And this is the first time to ever have that Aboriginal language from Tasmania spoken in any movie. Clare's Irish background makes her the scum of the earth in the eyes of her oppressors, the British specifically, along with being a woman in those times. Her social standing is barely above the Aboriginal people, who are killed on sight by the white people there. Like I said before, this movie is about violence and its consequences, how violence can ruin lives and communities, but can also bring people who have had similar experiences within it together. The themes and character work makes the third act incredibly cathartic. It doesn't take the traditional route of a revenge movie by the end of it. It actually finds an even more satisfying conclusion than I thought it would, or it could. I think that this movie is terribly underrated and underseen. It is a difficult watch, but it's also full of meaning and occasional beauty throughout it. Aisling Franciosi is going to be a force to be reckoned with as an actress, and this also solidified Jennifer Kent as one of the best, one of my favorite directors working today. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and it's one that's going to stick with me for a while. I do prefer The Babadook over it, just if we're talking about Kent's movies, but these subject matters are also incredibly different and incredibly different types of stories, so they stand very solidly on their own. They're both great. This movie is fantastic. Like I said before and said many times throughout this review, it's a difficult watch. You might want to look into what it contains before you watch it if you are squeamish with some of the subject matter. I think in some ways it's almost a necessary watch, but I'm going to be rating The Nightingale a 9.0 out of 10. Now, what did you guys think of The Nightingale? Do you prefer The Nightingale or The Babadook? Let me know, and I'll be back with another video.